I have 4 reasons to justify why I eat so much chocolate on keto, or excuse me, why you may want to consider eating more chocolate on keto. Number 1, a big fancy funky sounding thing called mitochondrial biogenesis. All right, so chocolate contains these polyphenols known as epicatechin. Now, in a lot of various animal models, like mice studies, there's been demonstrated evidence that, okay, yeah, these epicatechins, these flavonols in chocolate can improve mitochondrial biogenesis, which we'll talk about in a second. But it hasn't really been studied in humans. Well, recently, they were able to study it in humans. But first, what is mitochondrial biogenesis? Simply put, that is your mitochondria's ability to transform, to ultimately adapt, give birth to new mitochondria, expand into more mitochondria. I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can. So basically, like when you do keto, your body is taking in a lot of different fats, right? Well, you want your cells, your mitochondria, to learn how to use those fats. Mitochondrial biogenesis is essentially allowing you to develop new mitochondria or more mitochondria that know how to use said fuel. So mitochondrial biogenesis in the case of keto would imply that our cells become more efficient at utilizing fat for fuel, and thusly you can potentially become more fat adapted. So what about this human study? Well, the journal of the American College of Cardiology took a look at 17 older sedentary people, and it gave them 2 squares of Hershey's dark chocolate every day or a placebo. Well, here's what's wild. At the end of the study, the dark chocolate group had significantly higher levels of PGC1A, which is what drives mitochondrial biogenesis, but they also had increased levels of AMPK, which is also something that puts us into a deeper fasted state, or something that kind of induces ketosis a little bit more. It's the energy sensor within our body. Now, what's important to note is that the phosphorylated forms of these 2 things were elevated, indicating that the actual active forms were being utilized. Well, what does all this gobbledygook mean? It simply means that the consumption of dark chocolate and the epicatechin that's in the dark chocolate was driving up fundamentally how our mitochondria go through biogenesis. So therefore suggesting that chocolate could actually help us get more fat adapted. Meaning if we're doing keto, it might help us get into that ketogenic state a little faster and help us become more efficient at utilizing those fats for fuel. The next one is the relationship between stearic acid, one of the main saturated fats in chocolate, and a visceral fat, the fat that's kind of like underneath our subcutaneous fat surrounding our organs, like our potbelly. This study was published in the journal PLOS1, and it took a look at 40 mice. It is a mice study, okay? And it divided them into 4 groups. A stearic acid group, which is the fat we're paying attention to, safflower oil, corn oil, and even a low-fat group, okay? Well, the stearic acid group ended up having a 70% reduction in visceral fat. Holy cow. Okay, that's huge. Additionally, they had a decreased proportion of fat that was distributed throughout the abdomen, okay? And they ended up having better preservation of lean mass in terms of a ratio to fat that was lost. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate into humans 100%, but it's still very interesting. Now, if you look at a study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, it also demonstrated that compared to the other saturated fats, stearic acid doesn't trigger an increase in LDL. As a matter of fact, compared to the other saturated fats, it actually triggered a decrease. I don't want to, go into that one too much because I don't want to talk about LDL a whole lot and get into that rabbit hole, but still interesting and kind of disarms the whole saturated fat thing when stearic acid really doesn't seem to be all that bad. Today's video sponsor, by the way, is JoJo's Chocolate, which is my personal favorite keto chocolate. They have a JoJo's Goes Hawaiian, which has macadamia nuts in it, has coconut, it's delicious. They also have a raspberry one, which has raspberry, it's unbelievable. So the cool thing about this chocolate is it has a little bit of protein added to it, a little bit of plant-based protein, so it gives it more of a soft consistency. It's not super hard. And totally keto friendly, only a couple grams of net carbs, so you're totally good to go. But the best part, because they are a sponsor on this channel, and I know you love keto, that's why you're watching this video, you can buy 2, get 1 free. So essentially saving 30% off when you try JoJo's through that link down below. So totally keto friendly. And FYI, they have non-keto options too for those of your friends and family that don't necessarily want the keto version, but either way. So go ahead and check out that link down below and you can buy 2, get 1 free, save 30%. using that link down below. Big thank you to JoJo's Chocolate for the continued support. Oh, and for those of you that aren't keto, they have a new pumpkin spice flavor that is unbelievable, but you gotta go easy because it's not gonna work on keto. You just have a tiny bit. So check them out down below in the description. Next up is gonna be theobromine. Theobromine is in the same family as caffeine, but the reason that I mention it is theobromine can drive up what is called cyclic adenosine monophosphate. Essentially what that's doing is it's allowing a fat cell to receive a signal from a messenger to start lipolysis. So upregulating CAMP, cyclic adenosine monophosphate, is very, very critical to the whole lipolysis process. Sure, you can still burn fat without it, but it's definitely something that helps. It's in the same kind of group that caffeine would be in, like coffee, right? So we get a lot of the benefit from theobromine that we would get with caffeine in terms of potential fat mobilization without a bunch of caffeine and a bunch of the jitters. You can still get a little energy boost from theobromine, but it's pretty small, so I wouldn't really lean on it for that. So that's another reason. Of course, mobilizing more fats is definitely something good on keto. This next one is a relatively new study that I found very interesting, demonstrating that dark chocolate can improve insulin sensitivity. Why is improving insulin sensitivity so good on keto? Well, we definitely want to be more sensitive to the carbs that we consume, because then if we do happen to consume a few carbs, which is going to happen no matter what, our body knows how to utilize them and our blood glucose doesn't stay elevated for a long period of time. So it's a very good thing. So check out this study. So this study was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Okay, it had them do 7 days of no cocoa, no chocolate at all. Then they went 15 days with either 100 grams of dark chocolate or white chocolate. Then they did a 7-day washout period where they kind of let themselves clear out, and they crossed over. The white chocolate group now did the dark chocolate now did white chocolate. Okay, and they wanted to measure a few things. They measured what is called HOMAIR. This is like your homeostatic insulin resistance score. And then they also looked at what's called the quantitative kind of insulin sensitivity score. The dark chocolate group showed a significantly lower HOMA-IR score. So their insulin resistance score was significantly lower. In this case, it was about 0.9 versus 1.72. So we're almost looking at half the insulin resistance issue. Then we look at the insulin sensitivity score. Okay, the dark chocolate group had significantly higher insulin sensitivity. In this case, 0.398 versus 0.356. So what that was indicating was that the dark chocolate group had decreases in insulin resistance and improvements in insulin sensitivity when they gave them an oral glucose tolerance test. How this works is really fascinating. So researchers are hypothesizing that the reason behind this is because, again, the epicatechins and the catechins that are in chocolate can drive up what's called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide can improve vascular health, okay, endothelial health. It can improve vasodilation. So what happens is when you look at people that are insulin resistant, okay, they do not have a very high insulin-mediated vasodilation. When you consume carbohydrates and insulin is released, you should have vasodilation. Your blood vessels should relax a little bit to allow more blood flow, to allow the glucose to get to the peripheral tissues. People that are insulin resistant don't get as much of that vasodilation. Healthy people do. So essentially, the polyphenols in dark chocolate are potentially improving the insulin-mediated glucose uptake by improving vascular health via nitric oxide. At least that's what you can hypothesize based upon this research. The more that your body can deal with glucose, it's called glucose disposal, the better. Again, you don't want high levels of glucose circulating around. This is not good for anyone, plus it impairs your ketone formation if you're in ketosis. If glucose is circulating around, then that's going to halt ketogenesis. So you want to have what is called good glucose disposal. And more blood flow via more nitric oxide is going to allow that blood that has the glucose in it to get to your pinky toe where it needs to get taken up by the muscle. That's hypothetically speaking. So more blood flow, more circulation equals good. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. Don't forget to check out JoJo's, today's sponsor, and I will see you tomorrow.